Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you again today for the live Q&A with me, Professor Michael Scott. Can't remember my own name. Clearly, the Easter break has been good. I hope you have been having a good amount of chocolate consumption over the last couple of days, as well as enjoying the wonderful, wonderful weather, despite all the serious situation that we all still find ourselves in with COVID-19. And of course, we have to pay our thanks, as we should do, to all of the key workers, and particularly to the NHS workers that are helping to keep Britain going, keep us all supplied with everything we need in our homes, and of course protecting us and looking after us when we fall ill in hospital. So my thanks go out to all the key workers and to the NHS workers who are doing an amazing job, and thank you. So I hope that you all also managed to get some kind of break over the Easter weekend. And enjoy the sunshine as well. It's a pleasure to be back for another live Q&A, and thank you so much indeed for all your fantastic questions that have been coming in over the past week or so. We have had some absolutely great ones coming in, both over Twitter to me direct, also of course to the Facebook page and to the email address. So you can, of course, just a reminder, send in your questions either direct to the Facebook page, or you can send them via email to michaelscottacademic@gmail.com, or you can send them to me over Twitter or Instagram at Prof, and they will all get put on the list. Hello Alexis, how are you doing? The only reason I know it's Tuesday and it's 4 o'clock. Indeed, don't the days morph into one another a little bit at the moment? Hello Lorraine, hello from a hot conservatory, you lucky devil. It was a bit of a shock when the cold weather re-arrived this morning, or at least the colder temperatures, even if the sun was starting to shine. I found myself permanently in shorts for the past couple of days and suddenly was feeling a little chilly around the legs. Hello Glees, hello Sarah, how are you doing? Hello Latifa, good afternoon, how are you guys? Hello Susie, thank you so much all indeed for tuning in. And et salvete omnes. Kyrie, as we should say in ancient Greek as well. Kyrete. Hello, Graham. How are you doing? Thank you, Caden. So good to see you all. Thank you all for tuning in. Well, we are going to start today with a question from Twitter that came in from Josef. Now, his Twitter name is Josef Tralala Trilili, and I'm wondering if that, Joseph, if you are listening out there, is your actual full name, or whether it's just a fantastic coincidence that it sounds like you're an extremely happy chap having a wonderful time as Tralala Trilili. Anyway, your question is, how long did people in ancient Greece worship Zeus and the other gods? Great question. Hello, Ian. How are you doing? From Newcastle upon Tyne. Brilliant. Hello, Nicole from the dark night of Melbourne. Thank you so much for waking up and tuning in from Australia. Hello, Peter. Hope everyone's been keeping safe. Yes, indeed. Everyone well, indeed. So, from Joseph, how long did people in ancient Greece worship Zeus and the other gods? Well, it's a really interesting question. So the easier question to answer, the easier part of this question to answer rather, is when did they stop worshipping the Greek gods? Now, there's a sort of an official date answer to this question, and then there's a probable more real date. So the official date, technically, is of course when Greece became part of the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire converted officially to Christianity. Now, this was a slightly slow process running through the 4th century AD, but basically at the very end of the 4th century AD, under the Emperor Theodosius, that's when he outlawed the worship of the then known as pagan gods. And the pagan gods was a term that Christians applied to the Greek pantheon and to the Roman pantheon that had been worshipped up to that point. So technically, from the 4th century AD onwards, that was the end of pagan worship, the end of the worship of the Greek gods. We do know, however, that particularly at famous, well-known and popular religious sites in Greece, like Olympia, which was the home of the Olympic Games and also dedicated primarily to Zeus, the king of the gods, worship there continued, as did the Olympic Games actually continued for quite a while after that. People weren't quite yet willing to give up on their worship of the pagan gods. And so we know that worship continued there well into the 5th century and probably beyond. So we're talking kind of certainly the 5th, possibly even the 6th century AD at the end. When's the start point? Even more difficult to answer because, of course, when do we get the first evidence of the gods as we recognize them from the Greek world being worshipped doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't being worshipped in that form or indeed in some other form before we have the physical evidence for it. Now we can have physical evidence for the gods that we do have physical evidence for, the gods that we will come to recognize as part of the Greek pantheon, so people like Dionysus, for instance, appearing in the Mycenaean Linear B tablets. So that takes us back to 1450 through BC. So that is at least a 2,000 plus year period of the gods being worshipped. To put that into context, that's as long, or indeed just a bit longer, than separates us now from the ancient Romans and from the birth of Christ, supposedly in 1 BC, 1 AD. So there we go. Kind of the Greek gods were being worshipped at least for a longer period than stands between us today and the ancient past. John Scott, there's a John Scott joining us from Missouri, USA. It is not a relationship of mine, John, but you have exactly the same name as my father. I suddenly thought my father had joined in, John. Thank you so much indeed for coming on. Lee, hello from Salisbury, Sarah. Zeus is really mad that no one worships him anymore, says Sarah. But Sarah, they do, yes. So although kind of the worship of the pagan gods was kind of outlawed and then fizzled away in the 5th and 6th centuries AD, actually in Greece today, there is a group of people who have applied for official permission to be able to worship the pagan gods, and particularly Zeus. And indeed, a couple of years ago, at the temple of Olympian Zeus in Athens, one of the biggest temples ever constructed in antiquity, and it took from the 6th century BCE through to the 2nd century AD to actually construct the temple. It was so big because every person just couldn't manage to complete it until the Roman Emperor Hadrian came along. So a couple of years ago there was a worship undertaken of the pagan gods and particularly of Zeus. Now this did not include, as I understand it, blood sacrifice. But was instead a sacrifice of things like honey cakes, which were some of the other things that one could worship and place on the altar as a sacrifice to the gods, as well as the pouring of wine libations. But this is an actual cult. So there are followers of the ancient Greek gods kind of alive and well today. Bonjour Sophie, thank you so much indeed for joining in. Hello from Dublin, Eileen. Hello Carrie, thank you so much. Great to catch you from Western Australia as well. Lovely to see you all. Thank you so much for joining in. So, great question coming through Twitter from Yosef, talking about how long were the ancient Greek gods worshipped for, and we can definitively say for at least 2,000 years. So the same amount of time between us and the birth of Christ, and indeed between us and kind of the heart, if you like, of the beginnings of the Roman Empire. That's a long period of time, and they are back again being worshipped today. Now, we had another great question that came in that sort of follows on from this, which is kind of, now where are we? I wanted to find it. I've lost the question. Hang on a sec. It's all on my list, but we are talking about how can we get in touch with the Sortes and Strampsicus. That's what it was. Yes, Annette Oliver. Thank you so much indeed for your question. Annette Oliver asked about the Sortes Virgilianae. Now, have we ever tried this? Hands up or shout out if you have kind of offered or checked out the Sortes Virgilianae. Please, your little cousin sacrificed a rubber chicken for Loki. Okay, this is all good. This is all fine. I think, in fact, we at Warwick University, when we had the new Faculty of Arts building a groundbreaking ceremony happen a couple of months ago, in one of the strangest emails I've ever received, I was asked if some of our students could come forward and perform a libation to the ancient Greek gods at the groundbreaking ceremony. So, the new Faculty of Arts building at Warwick has had a libation and honey and milk pouring libation ceremony in its honour to appease the Greek gods. We have the Greek gods on side for our new Faculty of Arts building at Warwick University, which I am sure you will all be very pleased to hear about. Hello, Anthony. Hello, Gertie. Thank you so much indeed for tuning in. Great that everyone can join us today. So, have you tried the Sortes Virgilianae? And if you have not, I thoroughly recommend that you Google these. So it is, or just go direct to the website, http:// Virgilianae, and we'll place the link up on the Facebook page.com. And you can try out an ancient oracular remedy. Now, there were lots of different ways to consult the ancient Greek gods, and particularly the particular gods that were responsible, or responsive rather, to oracles, and that was mainly Apollo and others. But this one is a particularly famous one because it involves effectively having the text of the Aeneid, Virgil's Aeneid, and you sort of ask questions, and then you're directed to particular verse lines, and whatever the line is of the Aeneid at that point is the answer to your question. So Aeneid has been doing this, clearly whiling away some of the time while we're all self-isolating and self-distancing. Her finger was guided to the passage in Book 9 where the Trojans are safely self-isolating in their camp, and Turnus is berating them for refusing to come out and face the danger. She believes Virgil is thus telling us across the millennia to stay safe, stay inside. Brilliant. So have a try of the Sortes Virgilianae. But these are not the only oracular books or consultations that you can try from the safety of your own home. Yes, indeed. There's another set of books that were known as the Oracles of Astrampsicus that I find just as fun. Now, these date from an earlier period. They survived to us in a number of different fragments that have actually come from Egypt, but they seem to have been sent around as part of a letter that was flagging the Oracles of Astrampsicus in the aftermath of the life of Alexander the Great. So we're into the Hellenistic period, into the different kingdoms that were set up by the different generals that served Alexander, and then after his early death, those generals turned themselves into monarchs governing different parts of his empire. Now, in that aftermath period, the Hellenistic period, we have this sort of letter being sent saying, hey, this is apparently one of the sets of oracles that Alexander himself really liked to consult, or Alexander the Great was kind of famously loved kind of consulting oracles and used them very cannily from time to time to get his own ends. But this, and then the document gives us the Oracles of Astrampsicus. Now, these are in some ways even weirder. You sort of have a set of preset questions that you can ask this book, and then you have to choose a number between 1 and 10. And of course, you're guided by the gods in your choice of number. Then the consultant adds that number to the number of the question that they're asking, and then adds another number and subtracts a number, and then that guides you to a page where there are a set of answers, and then you take your original number and you read off that original numbered answer on that page, and there you get your answer to the question. And you can do this also online. So if you Google the Oracles of Astrampsicus, you can do that. And if reading book oracles is not your thing, but you want to consult the Pythian priestess herself, you too can do that in the digital 21st century online. Yes, thanks to UCL, University College London. If you Google UCL consult the Pythia, Pythia, you will be directed to a website where you can ask any question you like of the Pythian priestess. And it comes up with an absolutely fantastic little warning sign, which you have to click on OK for, first of all, which says this website is not responsible for any of the answers that the Pythian oracle gives. Right, so this is brilliant. So consult the Pythia, UCL, consult the Pythia, and you can ask any question you like, and you will get an answer from the Pythian priestess, reaching out through the internet, through the digital hoi polloi of the last 2,000 years, coming to us direct from the ancient pagans. So while we might not all want to worship the ancient pagan gods, as some in Greece are still doing today, we may want to get in touch with them to ask a few questions of our future. And we can do that through the Sortes Virgilianae, through the Oracles of Astrampsicus, or through the UCL Consult the Pythia. Just simply Google that, UCL Consult the Pythia, and you will get to the website. It comes up as number 1, Linda, but we'll put the link on the Facebook page, obviously, as well. Now, if you are a little bit more discerning, or adventurous, and you have access to an animal liver or two, you may want to try your hand at reading the entrails as well. That's also possible. You could cut open the liver, and then if you have a look at, for example, the Festos disc or other kind of ancient artifacts that are sort of survive, which inscribe the different areas of the liver where you would look for deformations in the liver that you've cut open, and you would thus read the signs of the gods. You can have a try at that. If cutting livers is not your thing, you can also, of course, read the flight of birds, You can also interpret an unnatural sneeze. Well, although there's a lot of sneezing and coughing going around at the moment, obviously, with COVID-19, so we may want to hang back on that one. But basically, anything could have been directed by the gods to give you a sign of the future. But if you remember back to our conversation a couple of weeks ago about the one thing you cannot trust fish. Whatever you do, the gods, the Greek gods at least, were not interested at all in using fish to communicate the future. So don't ever trust any fish. So thank you, Annette, for that absolutely brilliant question. And I hope you've been enjoying your sortes at Virgilianae as well. Can we get back to, we'll have to go back to some of the questions that came in live from last time. Miranali Pandi has been asking, I want to research on Greek architectural orders. Could I please suggest some reading? Absolutely, Miranali, I'd love to do that. A couple of different books for you that I think are brilliant. One, an older one by J.J. Coulton, who was an architect, trained architect before he came to the study of the ancient Greek world, and so brings with it a real professional eye and nuance for the detail of Greek architecture. And I still love his book from the 70s of Ancient Greek Architects at Work. So that's definitely worth reading. More recently, in the 2000s, Tony Sporforth from Newcastle University wrote a brilliant book called The Complete Greek Temples, which is brilliant, beautifully illustrated as well. So that's definitely worth having a look at. Maya, thanks very much. Finally catching the live show. What is your opinion of the Danubian writing Old Europe script? Yikes. Okay, we'll put that on the list and we'll get to that if we can, Maya, as well as a question. Thank you very much indeed. Jeremy, we've got a question coming from you in a second I'm going to get to as well. Thank you very much indeed. The birds have attacked a crow in your garden. They've attacked a magpie. What could that mean? How should we interpret this for the future? Oh my lord, who knows? It's brilliant. And one other book, Miranali, that I would recommend also is the Wiley Blackwell Companion to Greek Architecture, edited by Margaret Miles, which I have a short article in as well, talking about Delphi and Olympia. So between those three, that should do you proud. Jeffrey, you have asked about how did the Romans and Greeks handle the plague? Now, we spoke a little bit about this, about the different examples of plague that have come through antiquity in a previous Q&A, but I think there's been a brilliant article that we've circulated on the Facebook page, written by Armand Dangour, here based at Oxford, who's been relating particularly the current COVID-19 situation to the plague that befell Athens during the course of the Peloponnesian War in the sort of 420s BCE, which was a plague. Basically, Athens decided to withdraw from the territory. The Athenians withdrew from their wider territory of Attica into and inside the city walls of Athens, with the result that with so many people crowded into such a small space that plague swept through the city, devastating the population, killing its leader, Pericles, at the time, and indeed his two sons as well. Now, Thucydides, as Armand points out, describes the terrible effects of the particular kind of plague it was. But he also, as Armand points out in his article, comes up with several pieces of advice for how to deal with plague. I think that's well worth remembering. Avoiding infection by close contact. So kind of Thucydides was right there, talking about the need to protect medical staff and those able to help those in need, particularly though the importance of strong law continuing to function. This was something that Thucydides said was incredibly important for how Athens managed to see it through the plague, and there were moments when the law looked like it was going to be flouted. And indeed, it's really interesting that even the Athenians' deep belief in the gods seems to have been shaken a little bit during this time. So there are indications that sacred territory and parts of Athens that had been considered off limits to humans, they were like, well, what's the point? What's that? We've been forsaken by the gods with this plague. We might as well just go and occupy these areas anyway. But they hold to the law in the end. And the most important thing that Armand points out that Thucydides kind of underlines as being a crucial factor is to keep a positive state of mind. So some really good and overlapping ideas from ancient past about how the ancient Athenians were reacting to, and its later historians were reacting to and thinking about how they dealt with plague, for how we are now dealing with plague today. And I wrote a blog post on my website that you can see at michaelscottweb.com, and if you click on the blog page, you'll see Living in a COVID-19 World blog, in which one of the things that it struck me is incredibly important for us all is to, while we are taking this very seriously and while we are doing the hard job of self-isolating and while many of our community are doing the impossibly hard jobs of keeping our society functioning and also defending us and protecting us in the NHS and other health services around the world, we also have to keep a positive state of mind and a certain amount of good humour about it all as well. So I've been enjoying not only the fantastic captions that you guys came up with the competition over the last couple of weeks, but some of the brilliant memes that are circulating on Facebook and on Instagram and on Twitter that I've been trying to recirculate to you as well, because I think it's so important that we keep that good humour as well. So Armand, and that's how the ancients dealt with the plague, and they've got some good advice for us today as well. We have got a great question that came in from Ginny Theodora Gilliand, who was asking, was Leonidas a young man or an old man? Now, Leonidas, the hero of the Spartans, the Spartan king, of course, most famously known for being portrayed by Gerard Butler in the film 300. He's the guy who led a small Spartan force to the hot gates of Thermopylae, where he opposed in that narrow entrance and gorge the great might of the Persian army. Now, of course, Leonidas died along with his 300 Spartans there at Thermopylae, and although it was in the end a defeat as the Persians continued to invade down through Greece, it was one of the great famous stands that showed the real mettle of the Greek and particularly Spartan warrior mentality. But I think you're absolutely right. It's a great question, Ginny, because when we think about it, we don't, I think, normally imagine Leonidas to be an older man. Right? Certainly Gerard Butler, when he was playing him with his six-pack, and I'm always reminded that when the film 300 was made, obviously it's done in the style of a graphic novel, and not only were the actors training for months on end to get a good six-pack, thanks Bertrand for mentioning the six-pack, yes, not only did they train for months to get a six-pack, but then they had the six-pack definition painted onto their stomachs to give them a kind of even more defined six-pack, and then the six-pack was even further enhanced in post-production as well. So that's my excuse anytime anyone asks why I don't have a six-pack like Leonidas, or rather Gerard Butler in the film 300. It's because it's an absolute physical impossibility, which is kind of not one that we could possibly have, even if I went to the gym as much as that do. I think kind of the six-pack, the one-pack is so by far the new six-pack. Anyway, and no, equally, Gerard Butler, or rather Leonidas, in reality, in antiquity, was not wandering around in a little leather nappy like Gerard Butler does in the film 300. But Ginny's question is brilliant because it got me thinking that I wasn't quite sure how old we think Leonidas was when he was defending the pass at Thermopylae. Now, it's a little bit difficult to be for certain because we don't know his exact date of birth. So Leonidas is the son of King Anaxandridas II of Sparta, right? But when he died in around the 520s, Leonidas' dad, then there was actually Cleomenes the first who became king of Sparta from about the 520s, 516 or so, through until 490 BC. And it's only in 490 or around then that Leonidas becomes one of the kings of Sparta, and then is king for a relatively short period of time through until 480 when he takes his stand at Thermopylae and dies. So he has to have been born before his dad dies, obviously. So that's definitely before the 420s, the 520s. And so many people think that he was probably born around the 530s BC. Now, that would put him, when he turns up at Thermopylae, as pretty much a 50-year-old man. It's Colin, did I eat oats and blood like a Spartan? Yes, I did. When I did the Who Were the Greeks series for the BBC a couple of years ago, I was asked to try the famous black broth that the Spartans were said to eat, which was basically pig meat, pig's blood, and a bit of kind of oats thrown in along with some vinegar, and you sort of cook it all up and you eat it, which I did, and it had that very, very strong taste. You know, if you cut yourself and you sort of suck the blood on your finger or what have you, that sense of iron, that taste of iron you get in your mouth, it had a very, very, very strong taste of that. And what's famous about the famous black broth of the Spartans is that a king from Sicily was said to have tried it and famously commented that once he had tasted this meal, he understood why Spartans were so keen and willing to die on the battlefield, i.e. to get out of ever having to eat this stuff again. But yeah, so Leonidas probably, as far as we can understand, was a 50-year-old man when he was standing there fighting to the death in front of the invading Persian hordes. And I think this is really, really interesting to actually just do this kind of process for all of the leaders that we know from around this time. And if we date back a little bit to the invention of democracy in Athens that was happening at the very end of the 6th century, 508 BCE and onwards, the great kind of visionary that's credited with sort of almost inventing democracy, Cleisthenes. He was not a young rebel by any means, shape or form. He was first off, he was an aristocrat, he was an elite, but he was in his 60s as well. So actually a number of the kind of key figures that we imagine from the Greek world as these young, vibrant, dynamic, game-changing individuals are actually much older, maturer individuals who really, in terms of the ancient Greek life expectancy, are coming towards very much the upper end of that. I mean, if you made it to 70 in the ancient Greek world, you were doing extremely well, and life expectancy was normally much less than that. So Leonidas, imagine that guy, 50, marching all the way up from Sparta to the Hot Gates to then stand there and fight with his troops and make the fateful decisions that he did to not back down and to not leave and to die in place. Ginny, brilliant question. Really, really love that question. We've got to take a second to talk about some of the amazing things that are happening around the world. In the news, researchers have discovered early complex brain surgery in ancient Greece. So from Adelphi University, they've been looking at a group of mounted archers that show signs of 10 skeletons that are coming from the Palikastro site on Thasos Island in Greece. They're showing a complex form of brain surgery. Eugenia is asking, would it be possible to dedicate a meeting to Alexander the Great? Yes, we can. And don't forget, get your tickets if you're in the UK and near London to your Dead to Me live special that I'll be doing in London with Greg Jenner in December. And we are going to be talking about Alexander the Great then as well. We've been coming in also probable Roman shipwrecks unearthed at a Serbian coal mine. I think this is extraordinary. So coal miners in Serbia recently dug up an unexpected surprise. 3 probable Roman-era ships buried in the mud of an ancient riverbed for the last 1,300 years. The largest is a flat-bottomed river vessel, 15 metres long, and the 2 smaller boats, each carved from a single tree trunk, match ancient descriptions of dugout boats used by Slavic groups to row across the Danube River. Absolutely amazing. Can you imagine to think how much the geography and the landscape has changed to make these boats something which can be discovered by coal miners, right? Absolutely phenomenal. And of course, we've already pointed out the Armand Dangour article about the plague of Athens, and we put all those links up on the Facebook page. Just to remind you also that my book, Ancient Worlds, is currently on Kindle for the whole of April for the bargain price of 99p, so you can get that. Greg Jenner and his team are going to be making a whole bunch of short kind of history-themed podcasts for your kids, if you've got your kids at home with you. Mark Bolotz has very kindly shared the fact that the original Great Roman Games, which were scheduled for May 1st, 2nd and 3rd, have now been postponed to October 23rd, 24th and 25th, 2020. So this is, if you get yourself to the city of Nîmes, the Great Roman Games are part of the great annual set of celebrations in the city of Nîmes, and you can go and see them there. So I think what better idea than post-COVID-19, when hopefully by October we can all travel again. We all go to Nîmes and we all go and watch the Great Roman Games. I love that. Do have a chance, if you've got a second, check out the blog that I wrote about living in the COVID-19 world on my website, michaelscottweb.com. And there's also a link up on the Facebook page to a new article I wrote for Torch, which is the interdisciplinary group here in Oxford thinking about peace. The case for universal amnesia, peace and security in antiquity. And also, E.J. Graham has recently flagged, and I've done some work there based at the Open University. I've done some work with them recently, but they are making free online access to the new volume, Lived Religion in the Ancient Mediterranean World. So you can get a chance to have a look at that as well. Do we have time for one more question? Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we do. So what should we go for? Jeremy, WMW Davies, you asked, I have the opportunity of directing a Greek theatre production at my local theatre next year. If you had the opportunity to put on 2 plays in one evening, which 2 would you choose? Well, I throw this out to you guys as well. Which 2 would you choose if you had to put 2 plays on in a single evening? Just like in the ancient world, of course, the Greeks would have been watching plays, not just 2 in an evening, but all day. They would have watched 3 tragedies back to back, followed by a satyr play for a bit of light relief. So copying that, Jeremy, if we have to pick 2, I would probably go for 1 heavy play and 1 light relief play. So if it was a tragedy, I would always, I think Euripides' Medea, one of my absolute favourites. Kind of also Sophocles' Antigone, they're all very mainstream. Euripides' Trojan Women, these are all good ones, kind of some of my favourites. Followed by, a bit of Aristophanes, maybe Lysistrata or Thesmophorophi Zeusi. Susie, you're a Lysistrata, Eugenio, frogs kind of thing. Brilliant. Keep your suggestions coming in. We could do a poll. We'll do a poll on the Facebook page over the course of this week and ask which would be your 2 favourite plays to put on back to back in the evening. And perhaps, Jeremy, you can take some indication of that for which plays you might be putting on if you haven't already decided which plays to put on. But if you have, let us know. So we'll set up that poll on the Facebook page and let us know what your thoughts are. Amazing questions that have been coming in. We've had more questions live that we haven't been able to answer, more questions that got sent in as well. But we will be back. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for joining us this time. Our time is up, but we will be back. And the next Q&A we're going to do is on the 23rd of April. So next week, we're going to do 23rd of April at 2 p.m. So we're going earlier in the day, a little bit earlier in the day, 23rd of April, 2 p.m. Hope you are able to join us then. Jeremy, you haven't yet chosen which plays to put on. Everything to play for here, people. Get your votes in on the Facebook page. You could be helping influence which plays Jeremy gets to put on at the theatre. And then, Jeremy, if you let us know where you're going to be producing your plays, we can all come and watch your plays as well. That would be absolutely fantastic to see. So everyone, thank you so much indeed for sharing this time with me. It's been wonderful to talk with you all. Thank you for your wonderful participation from all across the world. It's a great honour and a privilege to spend this time with you. I hopefully will see you again on the 23rd of April at 2 p.m. In the meantime, as always, stay safe, stay well, and remember to keep thanking all those incredible people who are keeping our countries around the world turning over and who are defending and protecting us in our hospitals. Thank you, everyone, and take care. Bye-bye.